Hi everyone. It's as I said, this tour, Whimsical St. Petersburg, it's kind of continuation of the tours I've been running for a couple of months. Uh, what can I say? What can I do? That's it. Yeah, and this is technically speaking, it's not the same avenue that we walked together with you, but it's the continuation of it, sort of. And the islands, as you can see, it's all island after an island. They're all interconnected. So to the right hand side from the Peter and Paul Fortress, you see a bridge. So everything started with the bridge. The Trinity Bridge was constructed, and this is how several islands that before that you can see it now in the center of the frame. And before that, the islands where the Gorkovskaya station now, you can see it, the big letter M, and all the islands that direction, they had been just pure wilderness and just some homes, country houses, and manors of mostly aristocrats, but not exclusively. And that was it. So people would go there as it would be sort of their getaway destination, especially for the summertime, because in summer, St. Petersburg is absolutely unbearable to stay in because of all the smells, horrible smells of the city with the horses leaving their waste just in the streets, and then there was no proper sewage system. So imagine all that under the heat, and then the rivers. Well, you kind of get the idea. So Dostoevsky wrote a lot about it. And Misha will be also talking about this in one of his tours about Dostoevsky, that's for sure. And people just wanted to get away, and that would be considered sort of a staycation, but still, I would say far from the smells and the hustle and bustle of the big city. So Kamenny Avenue, you can see it, the name Kamenny Ostrov, right? So the avenue that we have been walking for the past couple of months is actually called after another island. And we are just starting our tours of this island because of this avenue, which is full of Art Nouveau buildings, is kind of the road that takes you eventually to the Kamenny Island, to the Stone Island. So it's Stone Island Avenue, and now we're finally reaching the Stone Island. Yes, not yet. It was 2 weeks ago that we finished sort of the avenue tour, and I would always show you these photographs. That's how the Kamenastrovsky Avenue, the Stone Island Avenue looked, just country houses. And but those are, I would say, some of the survivors mostly. These photos were taken in the end of the 19th century. Those were the survivors. Now there are a couple of wooden buildings that are left. The rest turned into beautiful stone manors, residential buildings as well. Should I rejoin? I wonder. So you're saying that I am freezing for several seconds. I'm not sure if it's a good idea. Okay, Sharon, if it keeps coming in, I will rejoin. Let's try like this because I might then just totally be kicked out from Zoom. Let's go on like this, and if it keeps coming, just let me know. And once you say it's back, I opened the whole world of the islands to St. Petersburgers. And behind our back now is the end of that island. Thank you, everyone. This is it. It's behind our backs. And we are actually now facing already the Stone Island. And the bridge we are walking is called the Stone Bridge, Kamenny Most. Kamenny Island, Kamenny Ostrov, Stone Island, Stone Bridge, Stone Avenue, kind of Stone Island Avenue. That's the Petrogradsky Island. This is the Aptekersky Pharmacist Island. That's where we had spent, I think, half a month and a half at least. That's it. We're done with that. And this is one of the armlets of the Neva River, the small Neva River. As you can see, From there, it flows into a bigger Neva. We are crossing the bridge to find ourselves in a very special place for Saint Petersburgers. And it's hard to imagine, but even in the 1930s, it was still, I would say, a bit of a wilderness in a way, in a way. But we'll see. So this is the photo taken in the 1930s. That's what that's what it looked like. So this is the stone bridge. That's what it looks now, and we are on the stone island. That's the same embankment that used to be a century ago, just a sand embankment. Now it's already a super luxury, very important green corner of St. Petersburg. In the previous tour, by the way, I have to remind you, we saw a palace, a Romanov palace we actually had never been before. That was the Stone Island Palace, Kamenniy Palace. That was built for and given as a present from Catherine the Great to her son. And this is what started off the development of that island. And it was mostly for palaces of the aristocrats because the aristocrats wanted to settle down next to the Romanovs and they could afford that. So that's what they did. And ever since then, it would be very much the same. Aristocrats kind of have changed, but the idea remains pretty much so. So, and one of the oldest examples of that, I would say, aristocratic country living is the house that belonged to the Peter, Duke of Oldenburg, who was related to the Romanovs. He was related to Nicholas I, and he lived in St. Petersburg together. It's mid-19th century we're talking here, and he lived in St. Petersburg. They had winter residences because Stone Island was only meant for summertime. So Peter, Duke of Oldenburg, and Princess Therese were one of the first aristocrats of the 19th century to settle next to the Romanovs. And they still have their house. And by the way, on the tours of the Stone Island Avenue, the Art Nouveau Avenue, we saw one of the schools for girls that were established by them as part of their charity activity, I would say charity campaign. That's the example of mid-19th century classicism. And speaking of the island, why is it called Stone Island? I might have said it before on the previous tour, but I will obviously say it again. There once the times of Peter the Great, so when the Russian army had already started pushing the Swedish army from the territory, there was found a gigantic stone. These two sphinxes, they were not supposed to be here at all. So the embankment is called the embankment of the smaller Neva River. And these sphinxes are here they've been here since 1970s. So Oldenburgs, they never saw these sphinxes at all. However, these sphinxes are quite old. As you can see the illustration, there is an embankment, but there are no sphinxes. That's just what it looked like. It was just the rural living. These sphinxes were actually made for a bridge, Egyptian bridge. I will show you the photos. But for some reason, the city authorities that were they actually were, the city, the municipality was the commissioner. Grisha, turn down the volume, please, for God's sake. Thank you. He knows the expression for God's sake, by the way. Yeah. So, but for some reason, the municipality did not accept these sphinxes. I don't know why they were not happy with them for some reason. And the sphinxes had been just stored in the Academy of Arts for a while, and then they were placed in the courtyards of one of the houses in St. Petersburg. It just belonged to a merchant. And after the revolution, they were placed in the playground of one of the buildings. And this is the photo. Imagine just an average, unassuming playground somewhere in the sleepy neighborhood, and then these 19th century sphinxes. This looks really odd. And imagine what kids would do to them. So this is one of those kids living in that building. They would ride those sphinxes. They would, I don't know, they would do all sorts of things with them. So, and then only in the 1970s, I mean it, a municipality kind of came round and said, okay, let's find a better place for the sphinxes. And then they were placed here on the small Neva embankment. I like this. I mean, this photo is horrible, but I also like it because now we also know that there is a flying sphinx, but there is also a swimming sphinx, two of them, unique species. This that's one of the um, floods in 1970s. It was end of 1970s. It was a pretty big flood. As you see, the water level rose pretty significantly. Yeah. So, and that's the bridge. There is still an Egyptian bridge. There are just these obelisks, right? So this kind of, it doesn't look so Egyptian, but this is the original looks of the Egyptian bridge. There are sphinxes. There are porticos, right, that look very Egyptian. And I honestly don't see much of a difference between these the sphinxes that we have on the small and Neva embankment and these ones. But for some reason, nobody knows why, by the way. I asked a lot of my colleagues, a lot of local historians, if, well, there is any understanding. No understanding. Nobody knows what the issue was. Nevertheless, you see this gorgeous bridge. It was a suspension bridge. It was one of several suspension bridges on the Fontanka River. It was beautiful. And because it was Egyptian, immediately the lore launched a chain of, stories of a curse. Because it was Egyptian, whenever there is something Egyptian, there has to be a curse. And you know what? They kind of jinxed this bridge because in 1905, and the bridge was placed somewhat 1870s. In 1905, the bridge collapsed. There was the whole army regiment marching on the bridge, crossing from one side to another, crossing the Fontanka River, and then the bridge collapsed. Several horses died, several army officers died as well. Numbers differ somewhat between 5 and 15 casualties altogether. The sphinxes from the second version of the sphinxes that were on the Egyptian bridge are now placed to the sides. So the old bridge is no longer with us. The bridge is different. The obelisks are different, well, I don't see much difference. As I said, I don't know. So we carry on our walk. Remember, this used to be from both ends, were from both sides. I mean, from both banks of the river. Those were just sand embankment, but now there are roads. And as I said, this has always been a very expensive, very affluent neighborhood. And why there are not so many aristocratic country houses from the 19th century survived? Because most of them would be rebuilt, and some of them were destroyed during the Soviet times. And well, this is the example of such house. It was built in the 19th century, but not sure exactly which year, however, but it belonged to Victor Planson, who was a lawyer. From the information differs. I tried to look up at least for some information, but there's not so much available. So there were several members of the Planson family, and it looks like they were related. They're not just people with the same name. And they were from Latvia, and they were either attorneys, well, lawyers, or professors and politicians. So I assume since they all were in kind of the same field, well, I assume they were related. But again, there's not much information there. I haven't been able to find much. And this house is lost. We no longer have it. In the Soviet times, some of those buildings were completely destroyed, and in some cases, a newer building would be constructed there. In other cases, well, there's just nothing there. That's it. But there is not a centimeter or an inch of the land on this island that does not belong to someone. So this island is still a private property, and it's a very special private property. So you see, this is a wooden house, and wooden houses are also not so easy to preserve as well. The night after the revolution, so which happened in 1917, 3 years later, in 1920, the Kamenniy Island, well, the Stone Island, would be open to public, and all those former country houses of aristocrats and merchants, they all of a sudden would turn into well, kind of resorts, kind of spa centers, resorts for the working class. And to commemorate, so kind of to celebrate the opening of those uh, resorts, was built this wooden archway, it's kind of triumphal arch, kind of official entrance to to this area. And you can see that to the right hand side from this archway, the house is still standing. So, but it's no longer with us. It's no longer around, unfortunately. From here, you can see that the construction is wooden, and it was a temporary construction. And also this one, this was also a temporary construction. It's the imitation of the rostral columns, rostrums that you may remember in St. Petersburg. Well, it's just for the fun of the working class. Before that, it used to be a fun place for aristocrats and merchants, and after the revolution, it became a fun place for the working class people. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it in Kamenniy Island, in Stone Island, because most of those houses that the common people couldn't have ever dreamt about visiting, they opened their doors. So, but it still remained a quiet nook, and boat rides and endless walks and picnics. This remained. Honestly, it's just the faces of the people that changed. Other than that, the same vibe. So the first example we can see this house is I would say, pretty big house constructed in the early 20th century. This is not Art Nouveau yet. As I said, of this tour, we have some eclectic architecture, and we can actually trace different stages of the architecture development. But the proper Art Nouveau begins a little later. But some stories here are absolutely amazing. So I hope you're okay with that. So this house was the home of a very important scientist and a doctor, neurologist, and neurosurgeon. And also here he opened the research facility that studied the work of the brain. And then in the Soviet times, it became the kind of it became kind of a psychiatric hospital. Yep. So, and originally the house belonged to this neurosurgeon and one of the brightest minds, I would say, of neuroscience and neurology in Russian medicine, Vladimir Bekhterev. His works are known around the world. This, and I'm saying it like I'm absolutely unbiased here. That's for sure. Bekhterev was a is a big deal still. There's even a disease named after him. It has something to do with the brain and some brain activity. I don't know. It's just called Bechterew disease. This photo, by the way, was taken by Karl Bulla, the photographer of Saint Petersburg, who happened to have been everywhere and have taken photos of everyone, from peasants to the Romanovs. And obviously, Bechterew, um, there are quite a lot of photographs, by the way, taken in Bechtierev's house and his study. And the amazing thing is, so this, by the way, this photo is blurry because it's of a very poor quality. So Bekhterev was not even evicted from this house. And for a long time, the Bolsheviks would not even make anyone move into this house. So this is how important Bekhterev was even for the Soviet science. And that was a huge perk. But eventually, in the 1930s, things would change. And indeed, some more people would be living in this house because, as you know, private property was eliminated. It became people's property. And most of these houses, many of the houses, as I said, would either be the resorts for the working class people, or they would become also temporarily the communal apartments. By the way, this is Bekhterev in a very, I would say, tender age. He was from a noble family, and despite his background and having a big house, still he would remain in this house till the end of his life. And for a long time, they would be living alone in this house, which was a big deal. This portrait of Bekhterev in his study in this very house was made by Ilya Repin, the famous artist of Russia, and he only made portraits of important and outstanding people, or people who had tons of money, which is not one and the same thing, obviously. So having a portrait by Repin was, I would say, quite self-explanatory. And the amazing thing, as the granddaughter of Bekhterev, Natalia Bektereva, also became a scientist, a neurosurgeon, and I read a book that she wrote. She passed away not so long ago, by the way. I believe she lived in Germany or Austria. So she wrote a book on the, I would say, the curious ways of how human brain functions, something like that. And there she shared her researches on how the brain perceives and reacts paranormal activity. She is the big scientist. Again, her works are recognized in the World Scientific Society. And yet she did a good research on paranormal activity. And that's quite interesting. Really, absolutely amazing. And her books have been translated to multiple languages because she's the brain, honestly. She was the brain. So an amazing artist. And that's, by the way, behind her in this photo. This is the photo of her grandfather taken by Karl Bulla. Definitely, I will be doing the tour of Karl Bulla and his photo studio in the heart of St. Petersburg. That's for sure. Also, on this island, as you can see, there are a lot of solid, pretty tall fences. The fences are everywhere, and this is something absolutely horribly annoying everyone else, because you also, okay, it's done for privacy, we understand that, because now many of these houses, they are either property of the administration of the president, or they are related to different organizations related to the president, or it's private property of very, very rich people and companies, and they want privacy and security. And this is so annoying, honestly. And we don't see the beauty, because many of the houses these organizations and people are occupying, they are gorgeous. Well, this is the story exactly with the house of Yelizaveta Leonova. Yelizaveta Leonova, this name should not really mean anything to you at all. She was the actress of the imperial of the imperial theaters, and she was extremely popular. Well, in her youth and in her times. We're talking here turn of the 20th century, since I'm saying imperial theaters. And look at the house she built for herself. It has been restored. But so she must have been a very successful. Was she Julia Roberts of her times? Must have been, must have been. Well, but unfortunately, because she was a theater actress, there are no films, there are no videos, so that's unfortunately how it goes with a theater career. You are forgotten after some time, after the contemporaries, after people who saw you on stage, also gone. There's not much left from you. But she at least tried, and she built this gorgeous house. And we have no idea. It belongs to some company, limited liabilities company, and this is it. So, but judging from the fans, I guess we kind of have an idea. And now finally, at least some sort of eclectic building, the early examples of future Art Nouveau craziness that we will see. Well, it now, by the way, this is a music school, and also it's kind of an art school and music center. But it used to be a house of Maria Kugusheva. Who is this Maria Kugusheva? We only know she was a wife of a politician uh, during the imperial times, and it was a common practice. So it was too risky for the politicians and businessmen to register property with their names, and they would prefer to do this for their family members that are not immediately, I would say, how shall we put it, responsible for the so all different kinds of activities of their spouses. So that's why Maria Kugusheva must have never worked a day in her life, yet she built this gorgeous house, lovely, not a gorgeous one, a lovely one. And this is one of the very few houses that is kind of still accessible, because you see there's no fence here, nothing. And this is the interesting example. It's the combination of stone architecture and wooden architecture. It was quite common. It was built turn of the 20th century, and it used to have Art Nouveau interiors inside. But unfortunately, during the Soviet times, it was communal apartments, and the communal apartments, they just destroyed all the interiors. There is no photo that I haven't been able to find a single illustration, only the memoirs and also what my colleagues shared with me. This was it, nothing else. So there is a staircase. It's not even original, but the window, well, the window frames, the windows kind of are original, and there were also some minor details that survived. Other than that, this is it. Okay. Now, again, you must have seen this ugly fence, the gray fence. So before 1940s, there used to be a house that belonged to a Swiss, no, it's not, yes, Swiss entrepreneur, Otmar Neyscheller. They were a family couple. There's no information whether they had children, but they bought this. They were Swiss. They were they were the citizens of Switzerland. So, but they purchased this house. They purchased the land. They built the house, and it was well, it was not a royal property, right? But it had such an expensive furnishing and art collection that it could clearly beat the Romanovs' residence, about 10 minutes walk uh, from there. These are their archival photos because this house was destroyed. It was turned down by the Bolsheviks. But before it was turned down by the Bolsheviks, it became the resort for the working class people. And the working class people would come here with their families. And I want to show you something. I hope this will somehow make it up to all those, connectivity issues. So I will share the story with you. Even if I overrun, I will definitely finish it. Well, first of all, some black and white photos that survived, so to speak. You can see, you kind of have an idea how gorgeous the interior was. Yes, this is not Art Nouveau. This is also quite an eclectic building. Is it a? There was even a dog in this photo. So apparently, Neyshallers, Ottoman Neyshallers had a dog. They had a big garden. Yep, for sure, very big garden. Grisha, could you please open to the dad? Just ask if it's daddy, okay? Yeah, that's him. It's okay. You can open the door. Goodness gracious. And they had a huge garden, and well, pay attention to some artworks you see. Pay attention to the sculpture in the center of the room. I'm still not quite sure what the other sculpture is. I'm not sure. I thought for a while maybe it was a human, but it doesn't look like it's a human. So I'm not sure. The photo is not crispy. This is all I got. Now, you can see a different photo. Like, Anna, are you okay? Why are you showing us this world famous, absolutely viral photo taken by Brandon Decoux, an American photographer who had traveled? Yes, kind of. You're very right, Dolly. You're very right. So, um, why, for some reason, Anna, would you show us this photo by Brandon Decoux? He had traveled probably half of the world. Well, that's because Brandon Decoux in 1930s visited Moscow and Saint Petersburg. And I have no idea how, but he stayed in the Otmar Scheller house and he took photographs that later on would be colored. I don't know by whom. And he still saw those gorgeous interiors of the clearly imperial times building. Uh, Yet you see the bulk beds and the furniture from the Soviet time, early Soviet period, a resort for the working class. These photos are absolutely incredible. Do you remember this sculpture? Just have a look. So you see this, absolutely amazing. I know. I had no idea. I just, I hang out on several archives and well, I found this. I had no idea how nobody had told this to me before, but this is absolutely incredible. And then we have tons of photographs by Brandon Decoux, an American photographer that somehow found himself in this building. It was 1930, so that's clearly well. Okay, here you see. It most probably. By the way, there are no photographs of Ottoman Neyshallers. but it looks like that the bust on kind of the window in the background is the bust of the spouse. But I don't know. I have no information about them whatsoever. Just just have a look. Well, this one is one of my favorites. So these are the kids of some of the working class people that just were staying at this resort. Goodness gracious, sit back on the sofa, please. The Messiah is not working. Grisha, thank you. And in the meantime, you could enjoy the gorgeous interiors. Now, same kids, but with some little addition to that. Just see the interiors. And it was just the dining room for the workers. But the interiors are still the same. This one is one of the most brain no, jaw-dropping. No, not mind-blowing, but jaw-dropping photos. This is the bust of Vladimir Lenin. And the Vladimir Lenin's bust is standing clearly on some really old pre-revolutionary base. And at the background, you see the beautiful bull furniture example, uh, on the one on which an expensive vase is standing. And bull technique, they use gold, they use precious wood, all kinds of wood, gold, and also they like to use turtle or tortoise shells. It was some of the most expensive 19th century furniture exhibits. And it was still standing in this dining room where kids, half naked kids would be running around the beds. Yes. So Brandon Decoux did a very good job. And this is what the house looked like from the other side, not from the river side, shortly before it was torn down. I don't know who the artist was, but I found it. I found this illustration online. Wasn't signed, so I don't know. By the way, during that stay, he also took tons of photographs of Leningrad, just tons of them. I'm sure you can recognize the Hermitage atlases. The Winter Palace, which is ridiculous because at that time, Winter Palace was not green. Winter Palace became green after the Second World War when they did the restoration and when they did the repainting of the Hermitage, because it was actually scarlet red when the revolution hit, and it remained scarlet red throughout the several decades before the end of the 1940s. Yeah, so someone who colorized the photos clearly was not aware of that, which is, okay. That's why you have, guides for and, historians. And this is the photo of Moscow. Why is it important? Because you see there is a store, it's called Torgsin. So Torgsin doesn't mean anything, but it's written in English. Actually, it means something, but it means in Russian. Torgsin means торговля с иностранцами, which means you can trade with the foreigners in this store. Foreigners can buy things from this store. So exactly in Torgsin stores, the former property of aristocrats and royals would be sold to foreigners and abroad. So that's why Torgsin is written in English. Isn't it amazing? I mean, it's sad, but it's also amazing. So thank you, Brandon Decoux. And unfortunately, not actually, Brandon Decoux liked his stay in Moscow and Leningrad so much that in 1932 he came back. And that time he was briefly arrested because, on the grounds that he had been taken too many photographs of locations in Saint Petersburg. So he was briefly arrested, but then he was released, and then he would never come back again. And I'm showing you quite a blurry photo anyway, taken in the Soviet times. So they tore down the Ottoman Scheller building to build this. Um, I will turn on the camera for you to see my face, right? So I need a couple more minutes. I know we are overrunning, but I need to make it up to you. So I want to finish the story. And it became a residence K2. It's a code name, which means it became the official residence within KGB. And this is where all the officials, when visiting Leningrad from Moscow, as well as foreign delegations, would be staying in St. Petersburg. Oh, Leningrad, sorry. We're talking Leningrad still. And that's the interiors. I mean, impressive. Okay, that's impressive, but come on. I'm not sharing too many photos, just a little bit because it hurts. Because we've just seen Brandon the coup and now this. It hurts, really. I'm hurting now. And speaking of the, well, I asked myself and I also looked up where the exhibits went to. I mean, well, those beautiful vases, sculptures, carpets, furniture that belong to Otmar Neysheller, I have not been able to find any information. So it must have been sold through Torxin stores. Who knows? Yeah. So, well, this tapestry could have been from the Hermitage collection easily, because why bother? And speaking of the visitors, and speaking of the delegations, this photo was taken in 1970s, and this is Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein visited Leningrad when he was just the press secretary of the Iraqi Socialist Party. Oh, goodness gracious. So this is Saddam Hussein. And also another interesting visitor is Montserrat Caballé. She also um, happened to have been invited to residence K2 or K2 residence. Yep. So, and the residence is still there, by the way, and it still belongs to the Federal Security Services. Goodness gracious, please stop eating the remote control. Misha, where are you? He has almost eaten the remote control. I swear I've made Grisha dinner before the tour. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I guess we are done. Let's finish with this one. Let's imagine we have not seen Saddam Hussein in Leningrad, but yes, Montserrat Caballé enjoyed her visit very much. That's, yes, that's for dessert. I'm so sorry. Okay, this has been, I would say, out of the ordinary tour in terms of connectivity. I'm so sorry. Um, I tried to make it up to you at least a little bit. I'm not sure how much I have succeeded in that. I'll see what I can do with the recording quality. I might be able to work some magic and make the. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll see what I can do. I always try to, work on the tour recordings to cut out the unnecessary Q&As or my introductions that are usually so wordy. So I'll see what I can do. I'll try my hardest. So in 20 minutes from now, I'm looking forward to taking you to the park of Catherine Palace, the Hermitage Pavilion, and other locations over there. Let me share with you the links In case you missed the Tbilisi live stream, a lovely one. The recording is there. So Catherine's Park and Pavilion, Hermitage Pavilion is over there. You have the links. And full course tomorrow, Zworykin, English Embankment. Thank you, Sharon. Oh yes, for sure, for sure. She was pampered in every possible way. Absolutely. I mean, Montserrat Cabal, yeah, of course. Then Ivan Krylov in Russian literature before Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Pushkin. Ivan Krylov is kind of, I would say, a pillar of classical Russian literature. And then Temple Mount. So tomorrow I'm taking it to the Temple Mount for the first tour of several. Ooh, wow, that's gonna be a challenge for sure. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Let me see what the questions are, if there are any. Thank you, everyone. As you see, Dorley, so Dorley said, I have no idea how you handle everything together. You see, I'm not. It was falling apart in many ways, including my remote control. So you see, I'm not coping. Not coping. That's it. Deserve a tip. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much. Yes, it's been tough for all of us. So, but now Misha is back, and I hope my connectivity is restored. But I don't want to jinx it. I don't know. I'll try to work out. I'll try to work on the quality of this recording because I know that Zoom definitely worsens the image quality as you stream. So we'll see. I always try to tweak it a little bit. Next time, wrap remote in the cabbage. Good idea. Good idea. Thank you, everyone. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. So you have the link to my website for other tours. Also, my last weekend recordings are still available on my YouTube channel. You have links for PayPal to buy me a coffee. Thank you for everything, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.